the shop floor to the boardroom on WBS Live. My name is Hein Weingaard and I'm your host for this evening. The issue that we are discussing is collective bargaining. Now, you may know that recently there was a strike at Kusile power station. The union NUMSA decided to stop working, and that's after salary negotiations failed with Marianne Roberts. And tonight we are going to discuss this issue. I am welcoming my panel consisting of the following individuals. I'm starting here to my left. I am happy to have you on the show, Ms. Sinovuyo Charlie. You are with Marianne Roberts.
Thank you, Hein.
And then we have Minister Olwethu Mkhize. You need no introduction, but we're always happy to have you. Next to you, Nolundi Tia, who represents NUMSA, the union.
Thank you, Hein.
And then we have Lebogang Gopanas. He's an economist with Standard Bank. Welcome to you too.
Good evening, Hein. Thank you.
And next to you, Denzel Arendse. He is an employee relations expert. I welcome you too, sir. And I'm going to start my questions by asking Nolundi from NUMSA's side, please explain to us what the nature of the collective bargaining was that preceded your decision to strike.
Thank you, Hein. Collective bargaining was very important for us because we wanted our grievances to be heard. And it was important for ESCOM as well because they were under immense pressure to complete the two plants in Medupi and Kusile. If you remember, 2 years back, we signed an agreement which was called a partnership agreement. We sat around the table with the Minister of Labour, ESCOM and Marianne Roberts. The idea with signing this agreement was that we are going to work in partnership and it was going to avert any future strikes. But because the employer is so arrogant, they decided not to adhere to the agreement, and then we as NUMSA decided that we are going to embark on this strike. The Minister of Labour again requested that we come around the table and discuss, but our discussions reached a deadlock. And there was also the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industries. They tried to discuss with us, but we didn't reach any agreement. Also, the Steel and Engineering Industries Federation of Southern Africa and the National Employers Association of South Africa, who represented the employers, requested a meeting with us. We sat with them and discussed, but out of that meeting, we decided that we are going to proceed and strike. Thank you.
Okay, so let's hear from the employer. You are being accused of having been arrogant. Sinovuyo Charlie, tell us from Marianne Roberts' side what you regard as the primary and secondary reasons for negotiations escalating into this strike.
Again, thank you, Hein, for the opportunity. Well, there were a couple of issues that were tabled to us, or proposals by the NUMSA union that were tabled to us, which included a 1,000 Rand housing subsidy across the board for every employee, a 12% wage increase. This is also across the board for every employee. Thirdly, we also had the discontinuation of labor brokers, which they requested that we do. But also, Hein, if I should take you a step back, I think the representative from NUMSA talked about the strike being a long-standing issue. So this was the secondary reason where there was a long-standing issue of the union calling for the reinstatement of workers who had been initially demobilized at various completion stages of the project.
Oh well, thank you. Minister, we don't have the Minister of Labour here this evening, but you are here as Minister of Public Enterprises. Please tell us about the interventions that you tried and what the results were, if any.
Thank you very much, Hein. The work stoppages pose a threat to the project timelines. ESCOM has not yet issued a comment, and that is my biggest concern here. Therefore, as the Minister of Public Enterprise, I had no choice but to intervene, and I met up with the NUMSA, ESCOM, and the contractors to try and find out a very innovative solution of how can we stop the threatening progress of the power station. I'm aware that the workers were promised a certain amount of money, and right now there's nothing that we can do. The only thing that I can say to you, Han, is that the deadline of the power station will not change. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Now let's go to the number cruncher, Ms. Lebogang Gopana. You are an economist and you are someone who looks at these strikes and you make the calculations. What is the strike costing us, costing the country, costing the employers and the employees?
Thank you, Hi. Real GDP has fallen in the first half of the year by 2% pointage on growth, and in the fourth quarter of this year, 6% growth. Marion Roberts has lost about 335 million rands on production, as well as penalty costs to Eskom. In regards to Eskom, they have lost 120 billion rands on production, as well as revenue to be made within the market. And that is the cost implications that have occurred with the strikes pertaining to South Africa. Furthermore, there's been uncertainty on electricity supply and government policies, which have affected the commodity prices, which have weighed on to investment confidence. So we need to start in encouraging more investment within the economy to drive it up.
Yeah, thanks very much. So Denzel Arendse, you're an employee relations expert. You heard those mind-blowing numbers that almost confused our economists on the panel this evening. How might the strike have been avoided?
And I'll do my best not to confuse you as well, but there's some technical terms I need to get through. Firstly, there's many ways a strike could have been avoided, such as better industrial relations in the companies, having a permanent mediator from the CCMA on site. I could talk to you all night about those solutions, but the one that I would like to speak to you about is workplace forums. Before I speak to you about workplace forums, I'd like to give you a bit of background. Now, a major player in the industry, the Construction Industry Development Board, or the CIDB, post-Kusile and Medupi and other NUMSA-related strikes, they conducted a study. And during the study, working conditions in the South African construction industry were analysed. And on the basis of this analysis, the CIDB made recommendations. Now, according to our constitution, employers and employees have a right to association and also a right to collective bargaining as stipulated by the Labour Relations Act. The CIDB study noted that there is very limited unionization in the industry, and this can be attributed to the short-term nature of a project-based industry like the construction industry. It is unlikely that the construction industry's willingness or want to be involved in collective bargaining is ever going to change. An interesting note which came from the study showed that while the majority of strikes that take place in the industry are actually illegal strikes from non-unionized members, the cost of the less frequent legal union-based strikes is actually higher. And the reason for this is the legal union-led strikes take longer to resolve. What can we read into that? Well, what we can read into that is that the collective bargaining structures that are currently in place are struggling to resolve these issues. And why, you may ask? And well, it is because of the very nature of our collective bargaining. And the nature of our collective bargaining is adversarial, simply meaning that our collective bargaining comes down to an argument over who is right, who is wrong, and who can hold out the longest, as opposed to both parties trying to work together to achieve a lasting solution. I read in a journal recently that suggested that the existing bargaining structures remain in place, but that they are also supplemented. The journal also noted that collective bargaining is often more reactive than proactive, and collective bargaining only takes place once employees are unhappy about a decision that management have made. And at this point, the labourers are upset, they are frustrated, and not just for the decisions that were made, but also because they were not consulted. Collective bargaining is primarily concerned with issues such as improvement to terms and conditions, higher wages, etc., but other important issues such as productivity, skills development, and other issues which affect their day-to-day activities fell to the wayside. Now, Hein, I know that this is a lot of information to take in, but in reality, workplace forums are actually quite a simple principle to understand.
So I have this question of what the employer or whether the employer had any options that may have avoided the strike. I'm wondering if this workplace forum that you're referring to is an option for the employer.
Absolutely, Anne, absolutely. The workplace forum grants workers decision-making power and it grants them a voice, and it deals with issues at a workplace level in a timely manner. The underlying theory here is that having a voice in decision-making provides workers with a more active role and a greater input than they would otherwise have. It also ensures that employees are more committed to participation and are then less likely to want to use mass action such as a strike to have their voices heard. Now, I mentioned earlier that our Constitution recognizes the right to engage in collective bargaining, but the law generally limits collective bargaining and its impact upon the so-called core areas of the management of the business, and that is determining the direction of the business or their plans and policies. And because of this, employees are often not consulted when these types of decisions are made, and that leads to them being unhappy. This is where a workplace forum can then be helpful in promoting inclusiveness and encouraging joint decision making, thus alleviating employee dissatisfaction. In conclusion from me, unfortunately the current state of collective bargaining structure in South Africa seems to pit employers and employees in a confrontational manner
Yeah.
against one another, and it's almost counterintuitive when seeking to find a common solution, and certainly something needs to be done to fix it.
Well, I'm sure we'll continue to watch the developments at Kusile and other strikes that affect the workers of our country. So from the shop floor to the boardroom, we'll be back next week. Keep watching WBS Live. I'm your host, Hein Weingart, our cameraman, Vusi Magagula, and our producer, Rabia Mitadatu.